Welcome to our tranquil space, a sanctuary designed to help you find the deepest, most complete sleep. All the doubts about your relationships, all the unspoken anxieties, all the questions of, is it enough just for now? Let them rest outside the door. Now, find a truly comfortable position. Slowly feel each part of your body letting go, releasing the tension of the day's efforts and gently sinking deeper into the soft mattress. Relax your forehead, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders. Relax your mind. Tonight, we won't use philosophy to doubt or to overthink. We'll use it to anchor. You don't need to try to understand complex theology or analyze your feelings at all. Simply listen. Allow this voice to wash over you like the steady, rhythmic sound of rain falling on a solid roof, softly soothing your tired mind. And finally, take a long, deep breath in, and as you exhale, breathe out the uncertainty, ever so slowly. Let us drift into sleep together, and as your body settles into this quiet peace, let your mind begin a journey away from the maze of your own changing emotions and onto the solid ground of commitment, alongside the intense yet comforting guide, Soren Kierkegaard. In the stillness between each breath, we will walk the path of works of love, discovering that true affection is not a mystery you have to solve, but a simple work you can do, and in that doing, there is perfect rest. Tonight, we will plant a tree together, a hidden root with visible fruit growing right inside our own minds. Now, let your body rest, and let the journey begin. Soren Kierkegaard, writing from the cobbled tranquility of Copenhagen in the autumn of 1847, invites us to contemplate a botanical metaphor that is as soothing as it is rigorous. In his seminal text, Works of Love, he does not begin with the complexities of human psychology or the volatile storms of romantic passion. Instead, he asks us to look at a tree. Specifically, he asks us to consider the relationship between the invisible root and the visible fruit. This analogy serves as the foundational bedrock for understanding how love manifests in the real world, and it offers a profound remedy for the anxiety that often plagues our relationships. The central thesis is deceptively simple but metaphysically vast, while the source of love, the root, is entirely hidden. The existence of love is proven solely and undeniably by its fruits. To understand the depth of this concept, we must first appreciate the obscurity of the root. In the natural world, the root of a tree performs its life-sustaining work in total darkness. It is buried deep within the earth, intertwined with the soil, drawing up moisture and nutrients in a silent, ceaseless process that no eye can see. If one were to expose the root to the light in order to prove its existence, the tree would die. The health of the tree depends on the secrecy of its source. Kierkegaard applies this directly to the human heart, the origin of love within a person, that spark of affection. That swelling of care is a divine mystery. It is located in the innermost sanctuary of the individual, a place where no other human being, not even a spouse of 50 years, can fully enter. We can never truly see the love in another person's heart. We can only believe it is there. However, while the root demands privacy, the tree itself demands manifestation. A tree that bears no leaves, no blossoms, and no fruit during the harvest season is, for all practical purposes, dead or dying. Kierkegaard challenges the sentimental notion that love is purely a feeling. In the mid-19th century, the Romantic movement was at its peak, teaching Europe that love was a matter of sighs, palpitations, and poetic longing, an internal state of high emotion. Kierkegaard counters this with a pragmatic, almost agricultural reality. Love is what love does. If a father feels a profound, weeping affection for his children, but fails to provide for them, fails to discipline them, or fails to be present in their distress, the root may be there, but the tree is barren. And a barren tree provides no shade and no sustenance. This perspective was forged in the fires of Kierkegaard's own biography. By 1847, he was living in a state of social and emotional isolation. He had famously broken his engagement to Regine Olsen 6 years prior, a scandalous event in Copenhagen society. He had sacrificed the fruit of a conventional marriage to tend to the root of his philosophical vocation. Yet, in works of love, he seems to be admonishing himself as much as his readers. He understood the temptation to retreat into an inner world of beautiful thoughts and noble intentions. He knew how easy it is to sit in a comfortable chair by the fire, thinking lovingly about humanity, while doing absolutely nothing to help the beggar on the street or the neighbor next door. He recognized that the human mind is an expert at separating intention from action, convincing itself that the feeling of benevolence is the same as the act of charity. A rare and critical detail in Kierkegaard's analysis is the concept of forcing the fruit. A tree does not decide to bear fruit. The pressure of the rising sap compels it. Similarly, true love possesses an internal pressure that demands release. If there is no outward movement, it suggests a lack of internal volume. Kierkegaard writes, "Like the spring that is essentially deep, yielding, when the surface is cleared, its issue, so is love's mysterious life in the heart. The water must flow. If it is dammed up, it becomes stagnant. Thus, in a happy family, love is not a static object to be admired, but a kinetic force. It is the energy that propels a mother out of bed at 3:00 a.m. to soothe a crying infant. It is the force that restrains a husband's sharp tongue when he is exhausted and angry. These actions are the fruits. They are often unglamorous, repetitive, and tiring, much like the slow growth of an apple on a branch, but they are the only tangible evidence that the root is alive. This botanical philosophy offers a cure for the anxiety of uncertainty that keeps many awake at night. We often torture ourselves with questions about our relationships. Does he really love me? Is she just pretending? We scrutinize the micro-expressions of our partners, trying to peer into their souls. Kierkegaard warns that this is like a gardener constantly digging up the earth to check if the roots are still there. It is a destructive curiosity. We must stop trying to invade the hidden root, the inner feelings of others, and simply look at the visible fruit, their actions. If the fruit is good, if they are kind, if they are present, if they are supportive, then we must conclude the root is healthy. We must trust the evidence of the deed. Furthermore, this section establishes a crucial distinction between admiration and imitation. We often admire the great lovers of history or fiction, Romeo and Juliet, or the saints. But admiration is passive. It requires no fruit. We can admire a painting of a fruit tree without ever planting one. Kierkegaard demands we move from being spectators of love to being cultivators. The cultivation of love requires the daily work of pruning, watering, and harvesting. It suggests that love is not a lightning strike of destiny, but a long-term agricultural project. It requires the discipline to perform small acts of kindness when the emotional weather is stormy. Just as a tree must hold its ground through winter to blossom in spring. The connection to our own rest is palpable when we accept that we cannot control or see the inner world of others. We are released from the burden of suspicion. We learn to rest in the fruit that is present. Simultaneously, we are called to examine our own branches. Are we heavy with the fruit of kindness, or are we merely covered in the ornamental leaves of good intentions? Actionable conclusion. Tonight, as you lay your burdens down, perform a mental audit not of your feelings, but of your fruits. Shift your focus from the abstract question, "Do I feel loving?" to the concrete question, "What did I build today?" Recall 3 specific physical actions you took for the benefit of another person: a meal cooked, a message sent, a door held open. These are the undeniable proofs of your spirit's life. If you find your branches light, do not despair. Simply resolve that tomorrow you will produce one small, tangible fruit. By focusing on the doing, the feeling is kept safe in the dark, nurturing silence of the root, where it belongs. Let the mystery of the root remain a mystery, and let the clarity of the fruit be your peace. Section 2. The deception of silent affection. Having established that love must manifest as fruit, Kierkegaard guides us into the shadowy valley of a common human error, the belief that silent affection is sufficient. In this section, we confront the deception of the inner life. It is a comfortable illusion to believe that as long as we harbor warm feelings in our hearts, we are loving people. We tell ourselves, "I love my friend dearly. I just haven't called him in 6 months." Or, "My spouse knows I appreciate her, even if I don't say it." Kierkegaard acts as a gentle but firm prosecutor, arguing that unexpressed love is philosophically indistinguishable from indifference. If love is a work, then a love that remains silent and inactive is a worker who never shows up to the job site, to the neighbor who needs bread. The love of the baker who feels pity but bakes nothing is of no value whatsoever. This deception is particularly insidious because it allows the lover to feel virtuous without the cost of action. In the silence of our own minds, we can build monuments of love for our family and friends. We can imagine saving them from fires, delivering moving eulogies, or gifting them fortunes. In this imaginary world, we are heroes of affection. But Kierkegaard strips away this fantasy. He argues that by keeping love internal, we are essentially hoarding a currency that belongs to another. Love is not a property we own. It is a debt we owe. When we feel a surge of affection for a child or a partner and suppress it perhaps out of shyness, perhaps out of laziness, or perhaps out of a fear of vulnerability we are stealing from them, we are withholding the very nourishment their soul requires to thrive. Historically, Kierkegaard was writing against the grain of the beautiful soul die schöne Seele, a concept popular in German idealism and literature of the time. The beautiful soul was a person of immense sensitivity and inner depth, who felt the tragedy of the world so acutely that they often withdrew from it to preserve their purity. Kierkegaard found this repulsive. He saw it as a form of spiritual narcissism. A specific, rare detail of his critique involves the hypocrisy of the unsaid. He notes that we often use the excuse that words are too poor to express our love. We claim our feelings are so deep that language cannot contain them. So we say nothing. Kierkegaard dismisses this as pride. It is better to use poor words and be understood than to use noble silence and leave the neighbor in the cold. The neighbor cannot live on our silence. They need the imperfect, clumsy, but tangible coin of our words and deeds. Consider the tragedy of the estranged relationship. Two brothers stop speaking over a minor dispute. Years pass. In the privacy of his home, one brother thinks of the other with a softening heart. He remembers their childhood. He forgives the slight. He feels a genuine longing for reconciliation. He thinks, I still love him. But he never picks up the pen. He never knocks on the door. He dies with this love locked inside him. Kierkegaard would argue that, in the realm of reality, this love did not exist. It was a phantom. The work of love would have been the crushing, awkward, terrifying walk to the brother's door. That walk is the love. The feeling preceding it is merely the preparation. Without the walk, the preparation is wasted. This section also touches on the concept of redoubling fordoblelse, a term Kierkegaard uses to describe the transition from the mental to the physical. For a thought to become real, it must be redoubled in the external world. Silent affection is single. Active love is double. It exists inside the lover and outside in the beloved. This is vital for the health of any household. A marriage can starve to death on silent love. A wife may know intellectually that her husband is loyal and caring, but if she never hears the words or sees the gestures, her experiential reality is one of loneliness. The atmosphere of a home is built not by what is felt in the secret corners of the mind, but by what is circulating in the air, the spoken praises, the physical touches, the acts of service. Kierkegaard warns that silence is often a disguise for fear. We are afraid that if we express our love, it might be rejected, or it might look foolish. So, we protect the love by hiding it. But love is not meant to be a museum piece kept behind glass. It is a tool meant to be used, handled, and even worn down. The deception lies in thinking we are preserving the purity of our affection by not exposing it to the risks of communication. In truth, we are suffocating it. Love requires the oxygen of the open air for the sleepless mind, often ruminating on regrets. This analysis offers a pathway to resolution. Many regrets stem from things left unsaid, the I love you, not spoken before a departure, the apology not offered before a death. Kierkegaard's philosophy urges us to liquidate these regrets by adopting a policy of immediate expression. We must shorten the distance between the impulse of the heart and the movement of the lips. We must become transparent. The transparent person sleeps well because they have nothing hidden. Their outer life is a perfect reflection of their inner life. There is no backlog of unexpressed affection clogging the spiritual arteries. Moreover, Kierkegaard suggests that the expression of love actually increases the feeling of love. When we force ourselves to speak words of endearment, even when we are tired or shy, the act of speaking reinforces the bond. The fruit, the word strengthens the root, the feeling. By refusing to be silent, we participate in the continuous creation of the relationship. We become active architects rather than passive inhabitants of our connections. Actionable conclusion. Identify one person in your life, a partner, a parent, or an old friend whom you love but have not explicitly validated recently. Perhaps you assume they already know. Reject that assumption. The action for tonight is to break the silence. Send a simple message, not just asking, "How are you?" but stating a specific appreciation. "I was thinking about how you helped me last year, and I want you to know I cherish you." Do not let the sentiment rot in the storage room of your mind. Export it. By moving the love from your inside to their outside, you destroy the deception of silence and make the world in your sleep a lighter place. Section 3. Love as a strict commandment. We now arrive at what is arguably the most provocative and transformative concept in Kierkegaard's entire exploration of human connection: the shift from love as a fortunate accident to love as a strict, unyielding commandment. In our modern lexicon, and indeed in the flowery language of the 19th century Romanticism that Kierkegaard opposed, love is synonymous with spontaneity. We talk of falling in love as if it were a pit we stumble into by chance. We speak of chemistry, sparks, and magnetic attraction. These metaphors imply that love is a force of nature. Outside of our control, we are its victims, not its masters. But Kierkegaard opens the scriptures to the great commandment, "Thou shalt love." This phrase, "thou shalt," changes the entire ontology of love. It removes love from the realm of aesthetics and places it firmly in the realm of ethics. It transforms love from a feeling into a duty. At first glance, this seems unromantic, perhaps even cold. Can love be commanded? Is forced love real love? Kierkegaard answers with a resounding yes, and goes further to argue that only commanded love is true love. Why? Because preferential love, erotic love, or friendship is biased and fragile. It depends on the object of love being lovable. We love the friend because they are funny. We love the lover because they are beautiful. But what happens when the friend becomes depressed and dull? What happens when the lover ages or falls ill? If love is based on preference, it withers when the preference fades. By contrast, the commandment creates a floor that cannot collapse. When love is a duty, it becomes independent of the object's qualities. I do not love my neighbor because he is nice. I love him because I am commanded to do so. This liberates the lover from the tyranny of the changing world. The historical context here is vital. Kierkegaard was observing a society that idolized eros, romantic desire, and philia, friendship, brotherly affection. He noted that these forms of love are essentially forms of self-love. We love others because they reflect us or please us. This is pagan love. Christian love, or kärlighet, is different because it includes the element of self-denial and obedience. It is the only love that can survive the death of the spark. Consider the institution of marriage, a frequent subject of Kierkegaard's scrutiny despite his bachelorhood. The wedding vow is not a description of current feelings. It is a promise of future behavior. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. These conditions, worse, poorer, sickness, are the precise moments when eros fails. Eros runs away from sickness. It recoils from poverty. It is only duty that stays. Duty is the soldier that stands guard over the marriage when the romance has gone to sleep. Kierkegaard argues that the commandment acts as a spiritual corset, holding the relationship together when the soft flesh of emotion is too weak to support it. A rare and beautiful nuance in this section is Kierkegaard's assertion that the commandment secures love against despair. Despair in love comes from anxiety. Will this last? Does she still love me? What if I stop loving him? This anxiety is the root of much insomnia and relational neurosis. But when love is a duty, the anxiety is rendered obsolete. The commandment is eternal. It does not change with the weather, the hormones, or the bank account. If two people base their union on the commandment, they are building on rock. They know that even if they wake up one morning feeling numb or irritated, the structure of their love remains intact because it is not built on the shifting sands of mood, but on the granite of will. Kierkegaard writes, "Only when it is a duty to love, only then is love eternally and happily secured against despair." This concept of duty also democratizes love. In the world of Eros, only the beautiful and the charming are loved. In the world of the commandment, everyone is a candidate for love. The unlovable, the awkward, the difficult, they are all covered by the "thou shalt." This is a rigorous challenge, but it is also the path to true freedom. If my love depends on your behavior, then I am a slave to your actions. If you are mean, I must stop loving you. But if my love is a commandment I follow, then I am free. You can be mean, spiteful, or distant, and I can continue to love you, because my love flows from the commandment, not from your merit. I am no longer a reactive mirror to your moods. I am a proactive generator of care for the parent dealing with a rebellious teenager, or the child caring for a parent with dementia. This philosophy is a lifeline. The warm feelings may be gone, replaced by exhaustion and frustration. The world might say, "The love is dead." Kierkegaard says, "No, now the love is being tested. Now is the time for the love of duty. This love is not hypocritical. It is heroic. It is the act of willing the good for the other despite the absence of emotional reward. It is the heavy lifting of the soul. In the quiet of the night, this idea can settle the restless mind. We often worry that our feelings are not enough. We fear that because we felt irritation toward our spouse today, we are failing. Kierkegaard comforts us. Feelings are the weather, but duty is the compass. You can navigate the ship in a storm, irritation, anger, just as well as in calm waters, joy, attraction, provided you follow the compass of the commandment. You are not a bad person for having fluctuating emotions. You are a faithful person for maintaining constant actions. The strictness of the commandment is actually its greatest mercy. It takes the weight off our shoulders. We do not have to manufacture feelings of affection. We only have to obey the call to kindness. We do not have to wait for inspiration. The instructions are already written. Actionable conclusion. Relieve yourself of the pressure to feel perfectly tonight. Instead, embrace the security of the commandment. Look at a relationship in your life that feels strained or dry. Acknowledge that the eros or philia might be low right now. Then, consciously flip the switch to duty. Say to yourself, I am commanded to love this person, regardless of how I feel. This is not a cold resignation, but a warm commitment. It allows you to perform a small act of service, filling their water glass, checking the locks, praying for them, not because you want to, but because it is right. In this obedience, you will find a stability that emotion can never provide. Rest in the certainty of the commandment. Section 4. The neighbor as the action's target. We now turn our gaze to the object of our affection. In the geography of the heart, Kierkegaard forces us to redraw the map entirely. Most of us operate with a map of preference. At the center is the self. In the first ring are our lovers and children. In the second ring, our close friends. And at the blurry edges, the rest of humanity. Kierkegaard, however, introduces a radical concept that disrupts this hierarchy, the category of the neighbor. In works of love, the neighbor is not merely the person living next door. The neighbor is a philosophical category representing all human beings. The challenge Kierkegaard presents, one that is both exhausting and exhilarating, is to shift the target of our love from the special individual to the present individual. This distinction strikes at the core of how we view romance and friendship. Kierkegaard argues that erotic love, Elskov, and friendship, Venskab, are essentially forms of exclusion. When a poet sings the praises of his beloved, he is implicitly saying, "I love this one person to the exclusion of all others because she is uniquely beautiful." This love relies on the object being special. But neighbor love, Nesta Kierkegaard, is blind. It does not look for beauty, intelligence, or shared interests. It looks only for humanity. The neighbor is simply the person who is there. This is a profound stabilizer for the mind. If we only love those who are special, we are constantly evaluating, judging, and comparing. Is this person worthy of my time? This constant judgment is a source of restlessness. When we accept the category of the neighbor, the judgment stops. We are free to simply act. Historically, Soren Kierkegaard embodied this philosophy in a way that was unusual for the aloof intellectuals of his day. While many philosophers sat in ivory towers, Kierkegaard was a man of the street. He was famous for his people baths in Copenhagen. He would walk the cobblestone streets for hours, conversing with equal enthusiasm with the King of Denmark and the poorest fishmonger. To Kierkegaard, the social distinction was a costume. The neighbor was the naked reality beneath. He did not wait for the perfect conversational partner. He loved the one who was walking beside him. This historical practice grounds his high-flying theory in concrete leather-on-pavement reality. A rare and intellectually piercing detail in this section is Kierkegaard's deconstruction of self-love. He argues that loving a friend is often just a disguised way of loving oneself. We like our friends because they understand us, they validate us, they are like us. It is a redoubled egoism. But loving the neighbor, the stranger, the boring colleague, the difficult relative is the acid test of true altruism, because the neighbor offers no immediate reflection of our own greatness. Loving them is a pure act of will. It is the only love that is entirely free of narcissism. Kierkegaard suggests that God placed the neighbor in the world specifically to test whether our love is genuine or merely a pursuit of comfort. This concept leads to the famous Kierkegaardian assertion: the neighbor is the absolutely true expression for human equality. In the world of the poet, people are unequal. Some are beautiful, some are plain, some are wise, some are foolish. But in the world of the neighbor, everyone is equal. This is a deeply restful thought for the sleep-deprived soul. We often exhaust ourselves trying to climb the social ladder, to associate with the right people, to be in the inner circle. Kierkegaard tells us to relax. There is no inner circle. There is only the neighbor. The person sitting next to you on the bus has as much claim to your kindness as the most famous celebrity. By leveling the playing field, Kierkegaard removes the anxiety of status. We do not need to hunt for the best people to love. The right person to love is simply the one who is nearest. This philosophy also changes how we view interruptions. We often view other people as obstacles to our goals. I have work to do, and this person is bothering me. Kierkegaard flips the script. The interruption is the work. If the neighbor is the target, then the child tugging at your sleeve or the stranger asking for directions is not a distraction from your life's purpose. They are the purpose. The action's target is thus defined by proximity. It creates a simple rule of engagement. Whoever is closest to you in this moment is the one you must serve. This eliminates the paralysis of choice. You do not need to save the world. You only need to be kind to the one person currently within your reach. Actionable conclusion. Tonight, redefine your circle. Stop looking for the perfect person to receive your care. Instead, visualize the person you will likely see first tomorrow morning. Perhaps a groggy spouse, a noisy child, or even a bus driver. Decide now that this person, simply by virtue of being nearest, is the most important person in your world for that moment. Strip away their history, their flaws, and their utility to you. View them purely as the neighbor. By simplifying your target, you simplify your duty. You do not need to feel a complex emotional symphony. You just need to offer the simple, quiet note of kindness. Sleep in the peace of knowing that your task is local, achievable, and right in front of you. Section 5. Constructing love in the other. We move now from the target of love to the architecture of love, in a section that reads like a manual for spiritual masonry. Kierkegaard introduces the concept of edification, or building up, at Opbygge. In modern language, we often use this term loosely. That was an edifying speech. But Kierkegaard returns to the literal, physical root of the word to construct a building. He poses a fascinating question. When we love someone, are we merely admiring a finished house? Or are we helping to lay the bricks for Kierkegaard? True love is an active construction site. To love another person is to help build a foundation of love within them. This metaphor fundamentally changes how we interact with the flaws of others. Usually, when we see a lack of love or kindness in a partner or friend, we criticize it. We say, "You are not loving enough." We tear them down. Kierkegaard argues this is the opposite of love. To build up means to act as if the foundation is already there, even when it is not visible. It is a creative, almost magical act of presupposition. The historical backdrop for this idea comes from the Lutheran sermons of Kierkegaard's time, where edification was a theological buzzword. However, Kierkegaard secularized and radicalized it. He wasn't interested in building church steeples. He was interested in building human souls. He observed that people often become what we treat them as. If you treat a person as a thief, they will steal. If you treat a child as clumsy, they will trip. Kierkegaard applied this to love. If you treat a person as if they are loving, you love forth the love within them. You build the very quality you wish to see. A rare and delicate insight here is Kierkegaard's insistence that to build up, one must be self-effacing. A bad architect builds a monument to himself. Look at what I built. A true lover builds up the other person and then steps back, so it looks like the person stands on their own. This requires a suppression of the ego. When you encourage someone, when you praise their small attempts at kindness, you are laying bricks. But you must not claim credit. The goal is for the other person to feel independent, not indebted. It is the difference between controlling someone, be the person I want, and nurturing someone, become the person you are capable of being. Kierkegaard writes, "To build up is to presuppose love. This presupposition is the key tool." Imagine a scenario where a friend acts selfishly. The critical mind says, "He is selfish." The loving mind, the building mind, says, "He has a loving heart that is currently blocked by stress." By assuming the love is there, by speaking to the better angel of his nature, you invite that better angel to step forward. You say, "I know you are a generous person, so I was surprised by this." This statement builds. It reminds the person of their foundation. It gives them a reputation to live up to. It constructs a reality that they are then compelled to inhabit. This is arduous work. It is much easier to point out cracks in the wall than to mix mortar and seal them. But Kierkegaard warns that love seeks not its own. If we only love people who are already fully built, fully mature, and fully kind, we are lazy laborers. We are looking for a move-in ready home. True love is willing to put on the hard hat. It is willing to look at a heap of rubble, a person broken by trauma, cynicism, or failure, and see the outline of a temple, and then, brick by brick, word by encouragement word, it helps them rise. For the listener seeking sleep, this section offers a reprieve from the role of judge. Being a judge is exhausting. You must constantly evaluate evidence and pass sentences on the behavior of those around you. Being a builder is tiring in a different way. It is the good tiredness of honest work. But it is also hopeful. When you are a builder, you don't despair at the mess. You see it as raw material. You realize that the imperfections in your family are not reasons to leave. They are invitations to build. There is a profound humility in this architectural love. It acknowledges that we, too, are buildings under construction. We need others to bear with our loose bricks and unfinished floors. By engaging in the work of building up others, we create a community of mutual construction, a shelter against the harsh elements of a critical world. Actionable conclusion. Select one person in your life who is currently under construction, someone who is struggling, irritable, or failing to meet your expectations. Instead of pointing out their flaw, identify the foundation of good that lies beneath it. Tomorrow, offer them a specific sentence that presupposes their goodness. Say, "I really admire how patient you usually are," or, "I know how much you care about this family." Speak to the version of them that does not yet fully exist. By validating the invisible foundation, you help them lay the visible brick. Lay down your gavel, pick up your trowel, and rest in the creativity of love. Section 6. Belief as an active choice. In the quiet chambers of the mind, where thoughts echo before they become actions, Kierkegaard identifies a silent enemy: mistrust. In this section, we explore the cognitive discipline of love, specifically the assertion that love believes all things. This is not a call to naivety or gullibility. It is a sophisticated psychological strategy to preserve the purity of the lover's own heart. Kierkegaard posits that belief is a choice, a switch we flip, regardless of the evidence presented by the cynical world. The central tension here is between the mistrustful person and the loving person, and who ultimately lives the truer life. Kierkegaard argues that we essentially have two options. When we interact with others, we can assume the best belief, or we can assume the worst. Mistrust. The mistrustful person prides themselves on being shrewd. They say, I will not be fooled. I see the hidden agenda. They look at a kind gesture and search for the manipulation behind it. They protect themselves from deception. But Kierkegaard asks a devastating question. Is it better to be right and miserable, or potentially wrong and loving? He concludes that the mistrustful person is always the loser. Even if they are right, even if the other person was lying, the mistrustful person has already lost their peace of mind. They have allowed the poison of suspicion to enter their own soul. This philosophy was forged in the bitterness of Kierkegaard's own public life. In 1846, he was the target of a brutal smear campaign by the satirical newspaper The Corsair. He was mocked in the streets. His gait, his clothes, his voice were all ridiculed. He saw the cruelty of the mob firsthand. He had every reason to become a cynic, to view every smile as a sneer in disguise. Yet, in works of love, he stubbornly insists on the opposite. He refuses to let the cruelty of others dictate the quality of his own interiority. He chooses to believe, not because the world is honest, but because belief is the only environment in which love can breathe. A rare and powerful analogy Kierkegaard uses is that of the thief. He compares the mistrustful mind to a person who hangs their laundry out to dry and then stands guard over it all day. Terrified, a thief will come. In doing so, they have wasted their entire day. They have lost their time and their peace. In a sense, the thief mistrust has already robbed them, even if no physical thief ever appears. The loving person, however, hangs the laundry and goes about their work. If the clothes are stolen, they have lost the clothes, but they have kept their peace. Kierkegaard argues that it is spiritually safer to be deceived by others than to be corrupted by one's own suspicion. Kierkegaard states, "To cheat oneself out of love is the most terrible deception. It is an eternal loss for which there is no reparation." This is the crux of the argument. When we choose not to believe in someone, we are not just judging them, we are barricading ourselves. We are shutting the door. And when the door is shut, love cannot go out, but neither can it come in. The loving person chooses to believe all things, not because they are stupid, but because they value their own capacity to love more than they value their intellectual pride. They would rather be the fool who loved too much than the genius who loved too little. This active belief is a form of spiritual hygiene. It cleanses the lens through which we see the world. When a spouse comes home late and grumpy, the default setting of the brain might be suspicion. They don't care about my time, or they are avoiding me. This is a narrative we invent. The work of love is to reject that narrative and consciously choose a charitable interpretation. They must have had a hard day. They need space. Kierkegaard emphasizes that we often choose the interpretation that hurts us the most. Why? Because it feeds our ego's desire to be the victim. Love refuses to be the victim. It aggressively interprets reality in the most generous light possible. For the person lying in bed, replaying the interactions of the day, this is a tool of immense power. We often stay awake analyzing. What did she mean by that tone? Why did he look at me that way? This is the spin cycle of mistrust. Kierkegaard says stop, choose the best explanation, believe it, and then sleep. Even if you are wrong, you have preserved your rest, and that is a victory. The truth of the other person's heart is hidden anyway, as we learned in Section 1. Therefore, you have the right to assume the best version of it. This belief acts as a shield. It prevents the cynicism of the world from penetrating the fortress of the self. By believing in the goodness of others, we help to create a world where goodness is possible. We become a sanctuary where others feel trusted, and people who feel trusted often rise to the occasion. Actionable conclusion. Tonight, identify a suspicion you are harboring, a doubt about someone's motives, their loyalty, or their feelings toward you. Recognize that this suspicion is a thief stealing your peace. Perform the Kierkegaardian flip. Consciously decide to accept the most generous explanation for their behavior. Say to yourself, I choose to believe they are doing their best. It does not matter if this is factually proven. It matters that it is spiritually healthy. By choosing belief, you disarm the anxiety. You lay down the weapon of scrutiny and close your eyes, not as a sentry guarding against enemies, but as a believer resting among friends. Section 7. Hope against all probability. We proceed from the discipline of belief to the strenuous labor of hope. In this section, Kierkegaard dissects the phrase, "Love hopeth all things," and in doing so, he dismantles our conventional understanding of optimism. In the ordinary world, hope is a calculation of probabilities. We hope for sunny weather because the forecast is good. We hope for a promotion because we worked hard. This is expectation, not hope. Kierkegaard argues that true hope begins precisely where probability ends. It is the spiritual refusal to accept the impossible when it concerns the salvation or redemption of another human being. To hope for a person who is doing well is easy. To hope for a person who has failed 1,000 times is the specific work of love. This section challenges the cynical realism that often keeps us awake at night. We look at a wayward child, an addicted friend, or a broken marriage, and the evidence tells us it's over. They will never change. This despair feels like wisdom. But Kierkegaard categorizes this despair as a sin against love. To give up on a person is to pronounce a final judgment on them, and judgment belongs only to God. When we say, there is no hope for him, we are essentially playing God. We are closing the book of their life before the final page is written. Love, however, keeps the book open. It insists on the possibility of the good, dead God's mule ahead, even when the reality of the bad is overwhelming. Historically, Kierkegaard lived this paradox in the agonizing aftermath of his broken engagement with Regine Olsen. Logic dictated that the relationship was dead. She had married another man, Fritz Schlegel, and Kierkegaard had become a controversial recluse. Yet, in his journals and his published works, he maintained a hope against hope for a spiritual reconciliation. He wrote his books with the specific intent that she might one day read them and understand him. He did not hope for a resumption of the romance that was the probability he had sacrificed, but he hoped for a mutual understanding in eternity. He held this hope for over a decade, refusing to let the silence between them calcify into nothingness. This personal stamina informs the text. Hope is not a fleeting wish. It is a long, hard vigil. A rare and intellectually demanding detail in this analysis is the concept of the mirror of possibility. Kierkegaard suggests that when we look at another person, we are standing before a mirror of possibility. If we look at them and see only their past failures, we trap them in the past. We effectively say, "You are your mistakes." But if we look at them with hope, we hold up a mirror that reflects who they could be. We signal to them, "I see a future version of you that is whole and good. This act of hoping actually creates space for the person to change. It is a psychological truth that people often rise or fall to the level of expectation set by those who love them. By hoping all things, we provide the spiritual oxygen necessary for their transformation. Kierkegaard writes, "Love hopes all things, yet is never put to shame." How can he say love is never put to shame? Surely, we can hope for someone's recovery, and they might still fail. Doesn't that make us look foolish? Kierkegaard answers, no. The shame lies not in the outcome, but in the giving up. The person who hopes and is disappointed has still performed the work of love. The person who gives up and is proven right has succeeded in being a prophet of doom, but has failed as a lover. The victory is in the act of hoping, not in the result. This redefinition protects the hoper. You are successful simply because you refused to despair. This work of hope is particularly relevant for the sleepless mind plagued by worry. Worry is essentially negative hope. It is the active imagination of the worst-case scenario. We lie in bed visualizing disasters for our loved ones. Kierkegaard invites us to invert this energy. Instead of using your imagination to construct a tragedy, use it to construct a possibility. What if they change? What if this crisis is the turning point? This is not delusion. It is a tactical decision to align oneself with the good. It requires muscular effort. Just as a weightlifter holds a barbell against the pull of gravity, the lover holds up hope against the pull of reality. The callback to Section 6. Belief is essential here. Belief deals with the present, interpreting current actions generously, while hope deals with the future, anticipating future goodness. Together, they form a temporal shield around the beloved. Belief protects their now, and hope protects their not yet. Furthermore, Kierkegaard warns against the knowingness of the modern age. We pride ourselves on being realistic, on knowing the statistics, on not being naive. But this knowingness is often a trap. It hardens the heart. To hope is to become a child again, to admit that we do not know the end of the story. It is a surrender of control that brings immense peace. When we accept that the possibility of the good is in God's hands, not ours, we can stop trying to force the outcome and simply maintain the vigil. Actionable conclusion. Identify a lost cause in your life, a person or a situation you have internally given up on. You have likely said to yourself, "I'm done hoping for this. It hurts too much." Tonight, reverse that verdict. You do not need to take external action, but you must take internal action. Consciously reopen the file. Whisper to yourself, "The story is not over. The possibility of the good still exists." Visualize one positive outcome for them, however unlikely. By holding this space open, you release the bitterness of resignation. You are no longer the judge slamming the gavel. You are the watchman waiting for the dawn. And the watchman, having done his duty, can rest. Section 8. Love seeks not its own. We now descend into the economic heart of works of love, dealing with the difficult accounting of the self. The phrase "love seeks not its own" is familiar, yet Kierkegaard strips it of its poetic varnish to reveal a stark, radical demand. In this section, we confront the concept of the mine mit. We live in a world obsessed with ownership, my rights, my time, my opinion, my feelings. Kierkegaard argues that the me and the mine are the primary obstructions to love. To love is essentially a process of liquidation. It is the continuous act of relinquishing one's claim on the world so that the other person may flourish. Kierkegaard uses the analogy of a thief to illustrate the severity of selfishness. A thief is someone who takes what is not theirs. But Kierkegaard suggests a more subtle form of thievery, the person who aggressively holds onto what is theirs when the neighbor is in need. If I possess joy, and my neighbor possesses sorrow, and I refuse to dampen my joy to sit with him, I am seeking my own. I am hoarding. Love, by contrast, is a form of spiritual communism where the boundaries of the self are dissolved. The lover does not ask, "What do I get out of this?" The lover asks, "What does the other need?" Historical context illuminates the rigor of Kierkegaard's view on seeking not one's own. He was a man of independent means, having inherited a fortune from his father, Michael Peterson Kierkegaard. Yet, throughout his authorship, he systematically depleted this fortune to publish his works and sustain his mission. He did not seek a career, a professorship, or a salary. He spent his inheritance until he was virtually destitute at the moment of his death. He practiced the economics of depletion he preached. He understood that to give the world a truth, he had to pay for it himself. This wasn't just financial, it was reputational. He allowed himself to be misunderstood and mocked so that his truth could be independent of his personality. He sought not his own glory, but the glory of the idea. A rare and fascinating nuance in this section is the distinction Kierkegaard makes between self-love and selfishness. He notes that they are often indistinguishable from the outside. A person might do good deeds to be praised. This is selfishness masquerading as love. It is seeking one's own through the mechanism of charity. Kierkegaard warns that the true test is what happens when we are unappreciated. If we love and the person insults us in return, do we stop loving? If we stop, it proves we were seeking our own gratitude, validation. If we continue to love, it proves we were seeking nothing but the welfare of the other. This leads to the profound paradox. To seek nothing is to possess everything. When a person gives up their rights, the right to be right, the right to be thanked, the right to be understood, they become invincible. You cannot hurt a person who wants nothing for themselves. If they seek no praise, you cannot insult them. If they seek no reward, you cannot cheat them. This selflessness is not a weak, doormat existence. It is a position of supreme power. It is the freedom of the person who travels with no luggage. The anxiety of life comes from protecting our luggage, our ego, our status, our emotional investments. When we put the luggage down, we can run. Recall the neighbor from section 4. The neighbor is the one who has no specific tie to us. When we love the neighbor, we cannot possibly be seeking our own, because the neighbor offers no reflection of our ego. We help the stranger not because they are ours, but because they are there. This reinforces the idea that love is an outbound vector that should never curve back upon itself. For the sleep seeker, this section addresses the turmoil of unfairness. We often lie awake feeling cheated. I did so much for them, and they did this to me. It's not fair. This internal monologue is the sound of the self counting its coins and finding a deficit. Kierkegaard invites us to close the ledger, throw away the account book. If you seek nothing, you cannot be cheated. The feeling of unfairness dissolves when you accept that the act of loving is its own reward. The payment for love is the privilege of loving. Kierkegaard also touches on the mine of opinion. We love to be right. In an argument with a spouse, seeking one's own is the desperate need to win, to prove the other wrong. Love seeks not its own opinion. It is willing to lose the argument to win the relationship. It acts as a shock absorber, absorbing the jolt of the other's anger without bouncing it back. Actionable conclusion. Identify one right or debt you are currently holding over someone's head. Perhaps you feel you are owed an apology, or you feel you have the right to be angry because of a past slight. Tonight, practice the art of seeking not your own. Mentally cancel the debt. Say to yourself, I do not need to be right in this situation. I do not need to be paid back. Visualize yourself opening your hands and letting the coin of that grievance fall to the ground. By relinquishing your claim, you lighten your load. You are no longer a debt collector of the heart. You are a free philanthropist of the spirit. Section 9. Hiding a multitude of sins. We arrive now at one of the most tender and visually evocative sections of the text, the concept that love hides a multitude of sins. This is drawn from the biblical passage, 1 Peter 4:8. But Kierkegaard transforms it into a sophisticated psychological strategy for preserving relationships. In a world that thrives on exposure, gossip, and the calling out of errors, Kierkegaard presents love as a concealing agent. This is not a cover-up of crime or a denial of justice. Rather, it is the interpersonal grace that refuses to let a person be defined by their worst moments. Kierkegaard uses the metaphor of a screen or a cover. When we see a flaw in our neighbor, a burst of anger, a foolish mistake, a moment of weakness, our instinct is often to point at it, to analyze it, or to tell others about it. Did you hear what he did? Look how clumsy she is. This is the impulse of the exposer. Love, however, acts as a cloak. When it sees the nakedness of the neighbor's sin, it instinctively throws a garment over it. It protects the dignity of the other person. It creates a space where the mistake can be corrected in private, without the shame of public scrutiny. Historically, this runs contrary to the policing culture of 19th century Copenhagen, which was rife with gossip and social surveillance. Kierkegaard himself was a victim of this exposure culture. The press and the public scrutinized his every move, his trousers, his gait, his habits. He knew the pain of being discovered in his imperfections. Works of Love creates a counter-culture of discretion. He argues that we have a choice in how we see the world. We can have the eye of the spy, which hunts for defects, or the eye of the lover, which overlooks them. A rare and critical detail here is the active nature of hiding. It is not that the lover is blind and doesn't see the sin. The lover sees it, but actively hides it. How? Through silence and interpretation. Kierkegaard describes a mechanism where the lover explains away the sin to themselves. If a friend is rude, the lover interprets it, he is tired, or he didn't mean it that way. The cynic calls this denial. Kierkegaard calls it the mitigating explanation. By providing a lenient interpretation, we hide the ugliness of the sin from our own judgment and from the world. We refuse to let the sin become the defining reality of the relationship. This connects back to Section 1, root, fruit. In Section 1, the fruit was positive action. Here, the fruit is silence. Sometimes the greatest work of love is what we don't say. It is the biting of the tongue. It is the refusal to spread the story of another's failure. Kierkegaard offers a profound image. The forest hides the animals. When you look at a dense forest, you know there are animals inside, but the trees hide them. Love should be like that forest. It should be so thick with kindness, patience, and good memories that the wild beasts of the neighbor's sins are hidden within it. A person entering your presence should feel safe, knowing that their flaws will be swallowed up by your acceptance, not paraded for entertainment. There is also a distinction between multiplying and hiding. When we dwell on a sin, when we talk about it, we multiply it. One anger becomes 2 angers, yours and theirs. One mistake becomes a rumor known by 10 people. Love stops the contagion. It absorbs the shock and lets it die. This is the physics of mercy. By hiding the sin, we prevent it from expanding. For the person struggling to sleep, this section addresses the loop of resentment. We often lie awake cataloging the sins of others against us. He was so rude. She forgot my birthday. We are exposing the sins to ourselves, over and over. Kierkegaard advises us to cover them up, not because the other person deserves it, but because we need a clean landscape to rest in. If your room is filled with the garbage of other people's mistakes, you cannot sleep. If you cover that garbage with the blanket of forgiveness, the room becomes tidy again. However, Kierkegaard is careful, and we must be too to distinguish this from enabling abuse. Hiding a multitude of sins refers to the imperfections and weaknesses of human nature, the harsh word, the forgotten promise, the petty selfishness. It is the daily bread of forgiveness required to live with imperfect humans. It is the refusal to keep a scorecard. Actionable conclusion. Recall a minor offense or an annoying trait of a family member or colleague that you have been focusing on recently. Perhaps they chew loudly, or they interrupt you, or they made a careless comment. Tonight, practice the art of not seeing. Visualize yourself taking a heavy velvet cloak and throwing it over that flaw. Cover it completely. Decide that you will not mention it to them, and you will not mention it to anyone else. By hiding their flaw, you protect their dignity, but you also declutter your own mind. Let the forest of your love be thick enough to swallow the noise of their imperfection, allowing you to drift into the silence of sleep. Section 10. The work of remembering the dead. We enter now into the quietest and perhaps most profound sanctuary of Kierkegaard's philosophy, the relationship with those who are no longer here. In a chapter titled, The Work of Love in Remembering One Who is Dead, Kierkegaard offers a meditation that is perfectly suited for the stillness of the night. He posits that the truest test of human love is not how we treat the living, who can thank us, reward us, or love us back, but how we treat the dead, who can do absolutely nothing for us. This is the ultimate laboratory for disinterested love. If you want to know if your love is pure, if you want to know if you are capable of loving without seeking your own, as we discussed in Section 8, look at your relationship with the dead. The dead are silent. They send no letters, they offer no praise, they provide no company. In the economy of human relationships, they are, to the cynical eye, a bad investment. They take our time and memory, but give no return on that investment. Therefore, Kierkegaard argues, if you continue to love a dead person faithfully, it is the strongest proof that your love is selfless. It is a one-way street of devotion. This section invites the listener to step into the hushed atmosphere of a graveyard, not as a place of horror, but as a place of absolute truth. Here, the fruits of love. Section 1 are laid upon a grave where no one sees them but God. Historically, this subject was deeply personal for Soren Kierkegaard. He lived in the shadow of his father, Michael Peterson Kierkegaard, a melancholic and deeply religious man who died in 1838. The father's influence was so colossal that Soren dedicated nearly his entire authorship to him. He carried the memory of his father like a sacred torch, despite their complex and sometimes difficult relationship while Michael was alive. This wasn't just grief. It was a deliberate ethical work. Kierkegaard believed that by remembering his father, he was keeping a part of him alive in the world of spirit. He was proving that love is stronger than death. A rare and philosophical nuance in this section is the concept of the unchangeableness of the dead. When we love a living person, they might change. They might become cruel, or distant, or different. This makes love anxious. But the dead do not change. They are fixed. Kierkegaard suggests that because the dead are unchangeable, any change in the relationship is entirely the fault of the living. If the memory of the dead fades, it is not because they moved away. It is because we moved away. Thus, the dead serve as a fixed point, a north star by which we can measure our own faithfulness. If we can remain constant to a silent star, we have learned the art of constancy. Kierkegaard writes, "The work of love in remembering one who is dead is a work of the most unselfish love." This work involves a specific kind of mental discipline. It is the refusal to let the crowd of the living crowd out the silence of the departed. In our busy lives, the dead are easily evicted from our minds. They do not clamor for attention. Kierkegaard argues that we must proactively make room for them. This is not morbid dwelling on the past. It is an act of honoring the continuity of the soul. It suggests that our community is not just those we can see, but includes the invisible choir of those who came before. For the sleepless listener, this section offers a strange but potent comfort. Often, we feel lonely or disconnected. Kierkegaard reminds us that we are part of a vast, timeless lineage. By actively remembering a grandparent, a friend, or a parent who has passed, we restitch ourselves into the fabric of eternity. We realize that relationships do not end at the grave. They simply change their nature from visible interaction to inner faithfulness. This removal of the end point of love removes the anxiety of loss. If love can bridge the gap of death, then love is indeed invincible. There is also a callback here to Section 6, belief. With the dead, we can no longer believe the best about their future actions, but we can protect their reputation in the present. We become the guardians of their memory. We hide their sins, Section 9, in the most permanent way, refusing to speak ill of those who cannot defend themselves. This chivalry of the soul ennobles the one who remembers. It makes us quieter, deeper, and more substantial. The action here is internal visualization. Kierkegaard warns against the monument as a substitute for memory. It is easy to build a stone monument and then forget the person. The true monument is the soft, living tissue of the heart that pauses to say, "I remember you." This invisible monument is far more durable than marble. Actionable conclusion. Tonight, before you sleep, perform the work of remembrance. Bring to mind one person you loved who has passed away. Do not focus on the sadness of their absence, but on the constancy of your bond. Visualize them clearly. Speak their names softly in the darkness. Tell them, "You are not forgotten." By doing this, you are performing a pure act of love that requires no reciprocation. You are asserting that your love is not a transaction, but a state of being. Rest in the peace of this eternal connection, knowing that just as you remember them, you are part of a love that transcends time. Section 11. Mercy is a work, not a mood. Having explored the silent love for the dead, we now turn to the messy, loud, and demanding world of the living, specifically dealing with those in suffering. In this section, Kierkegaard draws a sharp, surgical line between pity and mercy. In our modern lexicon, we often use these words interchangeably, or we confuse feeling bad for someone with loving them. Kierkegaard corrects us. Pity medlidenhed in the sense of shared suffering emotion is merely a mood. It is a feeling that washes over us when we see a beggar or hear a tragic news story. It is aesthetic. It evaporates. Mercy barmherzigheid, however, is a work. It is a physical movement. It is the transition from the sigh of the spectator to the sweat of the servant. Kierkegaard argues that it is dangerous to linger in pity. Why? Because pity is a deception. We can feel a rush of emotion, shed a tear for the unfortunate, and then go to sleep feeling that we are good people because we felt so deeply. This is a trap. The feeling of pity can actually be a substitute for action. It inoculates us against doing the hard work. We think, "I have paid my dues with my tears," and so we do not open our wallets or our hands. Kierkegaard demands that we kill the mood to birth the action. The historical context of Copenhagen in the 1840s is relevant here. It was a city of stark contrast between the wealthy bourgeois class and the destitute poor. It was fashionable in the Golden Age salons to discuss the plight of the poor with great eloquence and sensitivity. Kierkegaard despised this parlor-room philanthropy. He saw it as a form of entertainment for the soul. He challenged his readers. "Do not tell me how much you wept for the poor. Tell me what you did. Did you visit them? Did you feed them? Did you touch them?" A rare detail in this analysis is the inequality of pity versus the equality of mercy. Pity looks down. It creates a hierarchy. I, the fortunate one, look down on you, the miserable one. It can be humiliating for the receiver. Mercy, however, looks across. Kierkegaard insists that true mercy recognizes the equality of the sufferer. When the Good Samaritan helps the wounded man, he does not do it as a lord helping a serf. He does it as a human helping a human. He gets down in the dirt with him. Mercy closes the distance. Pity maintains it. This section connects back to section 1, root, fruit. Pity is a potential root. Mercy is the fruit. If the root does not push up into the fruit, it rots. Kierkegaard writes, "It is one thing to let the heart bleed in a sigh of pity, and another to help. The bleeding heart is useless unless it powers a helping hand." Furthermore, Kierkegaard addresses the grossness of mercy. Real suffering is often repulsive. It smells. It is ugly. It is annoying. Pity is attracted to the idea of suffering the tragic hero, but it is repelled by the reality of suffering the drunkard in the gutter. Mercy overcomes this repulsion. It is willing to deal with the unpleasant aspects of the neighbor's need. It is the work of cleaning the wound, of listening to the same complaining story for the 100th time, of dealing with the ungrateful. For the listener seeking rest, This distinction clarifies a common source of guilt. We often lie awake feeling guilty about the suffering in the world. I should care more, we think. Kierkegaard says, you don't need to feel more. You likely feel enough. You need to simplify. Do not carry the emotional weight of the entire world's pain that is a crushing, impossible burden that leads to insomnia. Instead, focus on the work. What can your hands do? The moment you convert a vague feeling of guilt into a specific, small action of mercy, the guilt vanishes. Action is the cure for the heaviness of the heart. Kierkegaard also warns against softness, blodaktighed. Softness is when we cannot bear to see suffering, so we turn away or pay someone else to deal with it. Mercy is hard in the sense that it is durable. It can look at pain without flinching because it is busy trying to alleviate it. Actionable conclusion. Identify a source of pity in your life, a situation or person you feel bad about, but have avoided engaging with because it is uncomfortable or sad. Perhaps it is a sick relative or a struggling friend. Tonight, resolve to move from mood to work. Plan one concrete, physical action for tomorrow. It could be as simple as dropping off a meal so you don't have to stay long if you are overwhelmed, or sending a small financial gift. Do not worry about summoning up the right emotions. Just plan the movement of your hands. By deciding to do, you release the stagnant energy of feeling, and you can sleep with the lightness of a servant who has received their orders. Section 12. Reconciliation as spiritual labor. We arrive at the delicate and urgent architecture of the bridge, reconciliation. In this section, Kierkegaard addresses the broken places in our relationships, the silences, the feuds, the cold wars of the domestic sphere. He frames reconciliation not as a sentimental reunion that happens when the time is right, but as a rigorous, athletic spiritual labor that must be undertaken immediately. The central thesis is that in love, there is no time to wait. To wait for the other person to apologize first is to abandon the post of love. Kierkegaard introduces a fascinating race metaphor. He argues that in a conflict, there is a race to be the forgiver. We usually think of a race to be right or to win the argument. Kierkegaard inverts this. He suggests the true lover races to be the one who offers the olive branch. Why? Because every second of estrangement is a victory for the evil one, or, in secular terms, for the force of division. The longer the silence lasts, the harder it becomes to break. The phantom of the argument grows in the dark. What started as a small misunderstanding calcifies into a permanent grudge. Therefore, the lover must be fast. Historically, this urgency reflects Kierkegaard's own anxieties. He was a man of intense reflection, who often overanalyzed his interactions. He knew how quickly a small slight could balloon in the mind of a solitary thinker. He wrote works of love to counteract this tendency in himself and others. He understood that pride is the great delayer. Pride says, I will forgive him, but he must come to me first. Kierkegaard calls this a sophistry. If you have the capacity to forgive, and you withhold it waiting for the other, you are not loving. You are bargaining. A rare and piercing detail in this section is the concept of the precipitation of reconciliation. Just as a chemical reaction requires a catalyst to precipitate a change, reconciliation requires a catalyst. Kierkegaard argues you must be that catalyst. Even if you are the innocent party, especially if you are the innocent party, you have the surplus of strength to make the first move. The guilty party is often paralyzed by shame or defensiveness. They cannot move. The innocent one is free to move. Therefore, the burden of starting the reconciliation falls on the one who is most capable of love. This connects back to section 8, seeking not its own. If you are waiting for an apology, you are seeking your own, your vindication. If you reconcile without the apology, you are seeking the neighbor's good. You are saving them from the burden of their own guilt. Kierkegaard writes, "To become the smaller one is the way to reconciliation. This is the yoga of the soul, making oneself small. In a conflict, we try to make ourselves big. Look how hurt I am. Look how right I am. This bigness blocks the door. To reconcile, one must shrink. One must say, our relationship is bigger than my pride. I will make myself small enough to walk through the door of forgiveness." This is not weakness. It is the ultimate flexibility of strength. Only a strong spine can bend that far. For the listener lying in the dark, nursing a grudge or replaying a fight, this section is a call to drop the weapons. We often think, I'll deal with this when I'm not angry. Kierkegaard warns that time does not heal all wounds. Sometimes time infects them. The work of reconciliation is to visualize the bridge now. You do not have to agree with what they did. You do not have to say what they did was right. You only have to decide that the connection is more valuable than the conflict. The callback to section 5. Constructing love is evident. By reconciling, you are building up the broken foundation. You are refusing to let the house crumble. You are acting as the repairman who fixes the leak regardless of who broke the pipe, simply because the house is worth saving. Kierkegaard also touches on the unconditional nature of this work. If you offer your hand and they slap it away, have you failed? No. You have succeeded in your work. The outcome depends on them. The attempt depends on you. You can sleep with a clear conscience because you did the work of the invitation. The door is unlocked on your side. That is all that is required for peace of mind. Actionable conclusion. Bring to mind a person with whom there is static or distance, a friend you haven't spoken to, a family member you are cool toward. Notice the resistance in your mind, the voice saying, "They should call me." Tonight, override that voice. Visualize yourself crossing the gap. Plan a bridge action for tomorrow. It can be incredibly small. A text that says, "Thinking of you," or a forward of a funny video. No grand apology is needed, just a signal that the line is open. Be the first to move. Win the race to kindness. By initiating the peace, you reclaim your power and allow your mind to rest in the unity of love rather than the fragmentation of conflict. Section 13. The danger of habitual love. We now navigate into the treacherous waters of time. Specifically, we confront the silent erosion caused by habit vanen. Kierkegaard identifies habit as one of the most formidable enemies of love, precisely because it is so quiet. It does not attack with the violence of anger or the drama of betrayal. Instead, it creeps in like moss on a stone, slowly covering the vibrant definition of the relationship until it becomes a shapeless green blur. In this section, we analyze the danger of taking love for granted and the philosophical necessity of keeping the work of love perpetually fresh. Kierkegaard argues that human beings have a natural, gravitational pull toward sleep, not the restorative sleep of the body which we seek tonight. but the spiritual sleep of the soul. We want to put our relationships on autopilot. We think, I won her heart 10 years ago. The work is done. We treat the wedding vow as a one-time purchase rather than a subscription that must be renewed daily. Kierkegaard warns that this is a fatal error. Love that settles into a habit ceases to be love and becomes merely a living arrangement. The spark dies not because of conflict, but because of the suffocating blanket of routine. The historical context is the bourgeois life of 19th century Denmark, where propriety and routine were worshipped. Couples would often live comfortable lives of utter spiritual estrangement, bound only by the habit of sharing a breakfast table. Kierkegaard, the champion of the individual, found this terrifying. He saw habit as a force that transforms a person into a machine. A machine acts without thought, without feeling, and without intent. If you kiss your spouse goodbye in the morning purely out of muscle memory, without a flicker of conscious affection, is it an act of love? Kierkegaard would say no. It is an act of mechanics. A rare and insightful detail in this analysis is Kierkegaard's distinction between the old and the eternal. Habit makes things old. It wears them out. A coat gets threadbare with habit. A joke gets stale with repetition. But the eternal never gets old. Love, because it is commanded by the eternal God, has the capacity to remain forever young, but only if it is fought for. Kierkegaard uses the metaphor of tuning the instrument. A violin does not stay in tune forever. It must be tuned before every performance. Similarly, the heart goes out of tune with the daily grind of life. The work of love is the daily retuning of the heart to the pitch of kindness. If we rely on the tuning of last year, we will create dissonance. This section challenges the listener to examine the scripts of their life. We all have scripts. How was your day? Fine. Good night. Good night. These scripts are safe, but they are the armor of habit. They prevent real contact. Kierkegaard urges us to break the script. To love is to inject a moment of presence into the routine. It is to look at your partner of 20 years and force yourself to see them as a mystery, not a known quantity. When we say, I know you inside out, we are often saying, I have stopped looking at you. Love continues to look. Love assumes there is always more to discover. For the weary mind, this might sound exhausting. Do I have to reinvent the wheel every day? No. Kierkegaard is not asking for constant novelty. He is asking for constant sincerity. It is about the quality of attention. You can do the same routine making coffee for your partner every morning, but you can change the spirit in which it is done. You can move from the servitude of habit. I do this because I always do it to the freedom of service. I do this because I choose to love you today. This mental shift breaks the crust of the routine. Kierkegaard draws a parallel to the manna in the wilderness. The Israelites were told to gather manna only for one day. If they tried to hoard it for the next day, it would rot. Love is like manna. You cannot store up the affection of yesterday to feed the relationship of today. You must go out and gather fresh manna, fresh acts of kindness, fresh words of affirmation every single morning. This dailiness prevents the stagnation that leads to boredom and resentment. The danger of habit is also that it blinds us to gratitude. We stop noticing the good things our loved ones do because they always do them. We feel entitled to them. Kierkegaard reminds us that entitlement is the opposite of grace. By fighting habit, we recover the capacity to be surprised by the goodness of the other. We recover the thank you. Actionable conclusion. Tonight, identify one habitual interaction you will have tomorrow, perhaps the morning greeting, or the text you send at lunch. Resolve to break the crust of that habit. Do not just say the words, mean the words. Pause for 1 second before you speak to ensure your consciousness is present in the sentence. Look at your loved one with fresh eyes, as if you are seeing them after a long absence. By infusing the routine with a drop of conscious intent, you turn a mechanical habit back into a living work of love. Sleep with the knowledge that tomorrow is not just a repetition of today, but a new opportunity to create connection. Section 14. Love as a transformation of vision. We move now from the habits of action to the mechanics of perception. In this visually rich section, Kierkegaard proposes a radical epistemological theory. Love is not just a feeling, it is a lens. It is a transformation of vision. He argues that we do not see the world as it is in some objective, cold sense. We see the world as we are. The angry man sees a world of threats. The greedy man sees a world of commodities, and the loving man sees a world of lovable beings. Therefore, the work of love is primarily the work of adjusting one's own eyes. Kierkegaard challenges the common complaint. I cannot love my neighbor because he is so unlovable. He flips this on its head. He suggests that the neighbor appears unlovable because you are not looking with love. This is similar to the biblical maxim, to the pure, all things are pure. Kierkegaard posits that love possesses a creative power. When a mother looks at her child, she sees beauty where a stranger might see only a plain face. Is the mother delusional? Norbert Kierkegaard would argue she sees the truth that is hidden from the stranger. Love gives her the second sight to perceive the intrinsic value of the soul. The historical backdrop is the scientific rationalism rising in the 19th century, which sought to classify and dissect everything objectively. Kierkegaard resisted this cold eye. He believed that some truths, specifically the truth of a person's worth, can only be seen through the subjectivity of passion. You cannot measure a person's value with a ruler. You must measure it with a heart. He uses the analogy of an artist. A bad critic looks at a landscape and sees only the weeds and the mud. A great artist looks at the same landscape and sees the play of light, the texture of life, the potential for a masterpiece. The lover is the artist of human nature. A rare and profound detail in this section is Kierkegaard's discussion of the look blicket. He argues that we have the power to look forth good or evil in others. If you look at someone with suspicion, they often become defensive and deceptive. You have created the very reality you feared. But if you look at them with openness and trust, they often relax and show their best self. The eye is not a passive camera, it is a projector. We project our inner state onto the people around us. Therefore, if your world seems full of annoying, flawed, difficult people, Kierkegaard gently suggests that the problem may not be the world, but your prescription. This section is deeply soothing for the anxious sleeper who worries about the state of the world. We often feel overwhelmed by the negativity we perceive. Kierkegaard offers control. You cannot change the behavior of the people around you, but you can change how you view them. You can decide to focus on the edifying aspects of their character rather than the destructive ones. This is not blindness, it is selective focus. It is the discipline of the photographer who chooses to frame the flower rather than the trash can standing next to it. Both are real, but the photographer chooses which reality to memorialize. Kierkegaard writes, "Love believes all things and yet is never deceived." How is this possible? If I see a thief as an honest man, am I not deceived? Kierkegaard argues that from the perspective of eternity, the thief's essential nature is a child of God. By seeing that, you are seeing the deeper truth. You are seeing the possibility, as discussed in section 7, rather than the actuality. By holding on to that vision, you maintain your own spiritual integrity. You refuse to let the darkness of the other person darken your own eye. This transformation of vision also applies to how we see ourselves. Often, we are our own harshest critics. We look in the mirror and see only failures, regrets, and flaws. The work of love includes loving oneself, as the commandment says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." We must apply this loving vision to our own history. We must look at our past mistakes with the eye of mercy, seeing them as stepping stones rather than tombstones. The action here is an optical adjustment. It is the conscious decision to change the filter. When we are tired, our filter tends to be negative. We see the mess, the noise, the demands. Kierkegaard invites us to put on the spectacles of gratitude. Through these spectacles, the noise of children becomes the sound of life. The demands of a job become the privilege of usefulness. The facts haven't changed, but the vision has, and therefore, the experience of life changes. Actionable conclusion. Tonight, perform a visual audit. Think of a person or a situation that currently looks ugly or hopeless to you. Acknowledge that this ugliness is partly a product of your current lens. Consciously attempt to shift your perspective. Ask, what would a loving artist see in this person? What would a forgiving mother see in this situation? Try to find one angle of lighting where the subject looks beautiful, or at least redeemable. By changing your vision, you change your world. Close your eyes and let the cold view of the critic fade away, replaced by the warm view of the lover, which softens the edges of reality and allows for rest. Section 15. The debt that is never paid. We arrive now at the paradox of the infinite debt. In the world of finance, debt is a burden, a heavy chain we seek to break. We work hard to pay off our mortgage or our credit cards so we can be free. But Kierkegaard, reading the epistle to the Romans, "Owe no one anything except to love one another," introduces a startling economic theory. In the realm of love, the debt is the treasure. To be in debt to love is to be in a state of infinite connection. He argues that true love is a debt that can never be paid off, and crucially, one should never want to pay it off. This concept addresses the transactional nature of modern relationships. We often keep a subconscious scorecard. I did the dishes yesterday, so you do them today. I planned the last date, so it's your turn. We want to be even. Kierkegaard calls this the anxiety of the settling of accounts. We want to be even because we want to be independent. We don't want to owe anyone anything. But Kierkegaard warns that once you are even with your lover, the relationship is effectively over. You have settled the account. You are now strangers again. The dynamic tension of love comes from the feeling of owing. Kierkegaard uses the analogy of a royal bond. Imagine a bond that pays interest forever. You are the issuer of this bond. You owe the interest of love to your neighbor. Every time you perform an act of love, you help, you give, you listen. You are making an installment payment. But the magic of this spiritual economy is that the payment does not reduce the principle. In fact, the more you love, the more you realize how much more you owe. The saint feels a greater debt of love to the world than the sinner. Why? Because the saint understands the magnitude of the connection. This historical perspective clashes with the mercantile spirit of Copenhagen's trading class, where solvency was the highest virtue. Kierkegaard argues for insolvency in love. To remain insolvent in love means you always feel you haven't done enough, not out of guilt, but out of abundance. It is the feeling of, you are so precious to me that I can never do enough to show it. This is a happy despair. It drives the lover to constant action. A rare nuance here is the freedom of the debt. Usually, debt is slavery, but the debt of love is freedom because it is self-imposed. I choose to owe you love. Nobody forced me. By choosing to remain in this debt, I tie myself to you, and in that tie, I find my purpose. Kierkegaard contrasts this with the payment mentality. If I give a gift just to pay back a favor, the gift is cold. It is a receipt. But if I give a gift because I am in the infinite debt of love, the gift is warm. It is a token of an endless bond. For the listener, this section relieves the pressure of keeping score. Many sleepless nights are caused by the resentment of the scorecard. I do more than he does. It's not 50-50. Kierkegaard says, love is never 50-50. It is 100-100. You owe 100%. What they pay is their business. Your business is your debt. When you accept that the debt is infinite, you stop looking at the scoreboard. You stop measuring. You simply give. And strangely, this stops the resentment. You are not losing. You are fulfilling your nature. Kierkegaard writes, by paying the debt increases. This sounds like a trap, but it is actually a spiral of growth. The more you practice kindness, the more you see the need for kindness. Your capacity grows. A weightlifter who lifts heavy weights doesn't say, I've lifted enough for a lifetime. The lifting makes him stronger, which makes him want to lift more. The practice of love expands the heart, creating a larger capacity and thus a larger debt to fill. There is also a callback to section 10, the dead. We owe the dead a debt of memory. We can never settle up with them because they cannot receive our payments. This proves the debt is eternal. We carry it comfortably, like a locket worn around the neck. Actionable conclusion. Tonight, take the mental scorecard of your relationships and tear it up. Stop calculating who did more work, who called last, who was nicer. Accept the infinite debt. Say to yourself, I owe love to the world, and I am happy to owe it. This does not mean you must exhaust yourself doing everything. It means you change your attitude from transaction to devotion. When you stop trying to get even, you can finally get some rest. You are not a debtor running from the bank. You are a philanthropist of the spirit, forever distributing a wealth that never runs out. Section 16, Independence through Servitude. In this section, we encounter one of Kierkegaard's most brilliant dialectical twists, the idea that true independence is found only through absolute servitude. In our modern culture, we define freedom as having no master. We want to be autonomous, unburdened, and free to do as we please. We view commitment, service, and duty as chains that restrict our freedom. Kierkegaard argues the exact opposite. A person who has no master is a slave to their own whims, their own moods, and the chaotic opinions of the crowd. True independence is achieved only when one voluntarily binds oneself to the absolute law of love. Kierkegaard uses the metaphor of the arrow. An arrow is free when it is lying on the ground, but it is useless. It only finds its purpose, its true flight, when it is bound to the bowstring and subjected to tension. The tension of the bow is the servitude of love. By submitting to the tension, the arrow gains the power to fly. Similarly, a human being is free when they are uncommitted, but they are aimless. When they bind themselves to the service of the neighbor section 4 and the commandment section 3, they gain direction. They become an arrow flying toward a target. This focused purpose is the only true independence. The historical context here is the romantic ideal of the drifter or the bohemian who refuses to settle down. Kierkegaard saw this figure not as free, but as lost. He argued that the person who changes lovers every month or changes convictions every year is a slave to the moment. They have no continuity. The person who serves the mother bound to her child, the husband bound to his vow, has a continuity that makes them a self. They have a solid identity that stands against the flux of time. A rare and critical detail in this analysis is the internal chain. Kierkegaard distinguishes between being chained by a tyrant, external slavery, and chaining oneself, internal freedom. If you serve your family because you are afraid of them, you are a slave. If you serve them because you have decided that love is your law, you are a king. The action looks the same washing the dishes, earning the wage, but the internal reality is opposite. The lover serves with the dignity of a monarch who has chosen his own duty. Kierkegaard writes, "Only the one who serves is free." This paradox is essential for mental rest. We often feel trapped by our obligations. I have to go to work. I have to take care of the kids. This language of have to creates stress. It implies we are victims. Kierkegaard invites us to change have to choose to. I choose to serve this family. I choose to honor this commitment. By reclaiming the choice, we reclaim our independence. We are not being forced. We are fulfilling our sovereign will to love. Consider the callback to section 12. Reconciliation. The one who initiates reconciliation is the servant. They humble themselves. But they are also the most independent. They are not waiting for the other person. They are acting from their own center. Servitude to love renders us independent of the other person's reaction. Whether they thank us or spit on us, we serve, because our master is love, not the neighbor. For the sleepless listener, feeling burdened by the demands of others, this is a liberation. You are not a victim of your schedule or your family's needs. You are a volunteer. You have signed up for this mission. By viewing your daily grind as a voluntary service to the high ideal of love, you restore your dignity. The weariness you feel is not the weariness of a slave under the whip, but the weariness of a soldier who has marched faithfully for his cause, and a faithful soldier can sleep soundly. Actionable conclusion. Tonight, look at the chains in your life, your job, your relationships, your duties. Do not wish them away. Instead, mentally grasp them and say, I choose these. Re-ratify your commitments. Transform your feeling of being burdened into a feeling of being anchored. An anchor is a heavy chain. yes, but it keeps the ship from drifting into the rocks during the storm. Your service is your anchor. It holds you in place. It gives you a definition. Rest in the security of your bonds, knowing that in your service to love, you are the captain of your soul. Section 17. The redoubling of reality. We approach the summit of Kierkegaard's practical philosophy with the concept of redoubling fordoblelse. This is a term that sounds abstract, but it describes the most concrete mechanism of human existence, the transition from the inner world of thought to the outer world of reality. Kierkegaard posits that a thought or a feeling is only single. It exists only in the mind of the thinker. For it to become real, it must be redoubled. It must be translated into a second existence in the external world. Love, therefore, is not a noun. It is a process of duplication. It is the act of taking the invisible intent and forcing it to occupy space and time. Kierkegaard argues that most of us are content to live in the first world of intention. We think, I am a loving person, because we have loving thoughts. But the philosopher warns that the world of thought is a phantom world. It is safe, frictionless, and perfect. In your mind, you can forgive your enemy without the awkwardness of a conversation. In your mind, you can help the poor without losing a penny. But this is not reality. Reality offers resistance. To redouble love is to push it against the resistance of the world. It is to speak the word that might be misunderstood. It is to give the money that you might need later. Until love has encountered resistance, it has not been redoubled. It has merely been imagined. The historical context of this idea lies in Kierkegaard's critique of the Hegelian philosophy dominant in his time, which prioritized the idea above all else. Philosophers sat in universities building grand systems of thought, while their personal lives were often petty and small. Kierkegaard viewed this as a spiritual sickness. He insisted that a truth is not true until it is lived. A map is not the territory. You can study the map of love for a lifetime, but until you walk the terrain, getting your boots muddy, getting lost, getting tired, you have not entered the reality of love. A rare and precise detail in this section is the risk of evaporation. Kierkegaard suggests that feelings are volatile spirits. If they are not corked in the bottle of action, they evaporate. If you feel a strong impulse to call your mother and you do not do it immediately, the impulse does not just stay there. It weakens. It evaporates into a vague sense of guilt. The redoubling must happen quickly. The translation from heart to hand must be immediate. The longer the delay, the more the reality leaks out. This connects back to Section 2. Deception of silent affection. Silent affection is single. It is a ghost. Expressed affection is double. It is a living body. The work of redoubling is the work of incarnation, giving a body to your spirit. For the sleepless mind. This section explains the phenomenon of unfulfilled potential. We often lie awake regretting what we didn't do. I meant to say that. I meant to go there. This is the haunting of the single reality. The cure is redoubling. When you act, even if the action is imperfect, you have moved the burden from your mind to the world. You have printed your intent onto the fabric of reality. Once it is printed, you no longer have to carry the file in your head. Kierkegaard also notes that redoubling changes the lever. When you act, the action rebounds and shapes you. If you act bravely, you become brave. If you act lovingly, you become loving. You are not defined by what you think, but by what you have redoubled. Actionable conclusion. Tonight, perform a mental check of your single versus double inventory. Is there a love that currently exists only in your head? Perhaps a plan to help someone or a desire to reconnect. Acknowledge that as long as it stays in your head, it is not fully real. Resolve to redouble it tomorrow. Visualize the specific physical action, the dialing of the phone, the writing of the check, the baking of the bread. The moment you move from thought to thing, you enter the solid world of reality. And the solid world is a place where you can rest, unlike the ghostly world of unfulfilled intentions. Section 18, Loving the Unlovable. In this section, we confront the ultimate test of the Kierkegaardian framework, the problem of the unlovable. It is easy to love the beautiful, the witty, the kind, and the grateful. This requires no work. It is a pleasure. But Kierkegaard insists that the specific work of love is to love those who offer no aesthetic reward. He pushes us to consider the person who is physically repulsive, socially awkward, morally broken, or deeply annoying. This is where preference dies and true charity begins. Kierkegaard draws a sharp distinction between aesthetic love and ethical love. Aesthetic love is a response to value. I love you because you are valuable. Ethical love is a creation of value. You are valuable because I love you. When we love the unlovable, we are performing a divine act. We are bestowing worth upon someone whom the world has discarded. We are not finding a treasure. We are planting one. The historical poignancy of this section cannot be overstated. By the late 1840s, Soren Kierkegaard had become a figure of public ridicule. The satirical paper, The Corsair, had published caricatures of him, mocking his uneven trouser legs, his hunched back, and his fragile frame. Schoolchildren would taunt him on the street. He knew exactly what it felt like to be the unlovable object, the strange little man with the umbrella. Yet, he did not respond with hatred. He responded by deepening his philosophy of love. He understood that if love depends on the attractiveness of the object, then he and many others were doomed. He championed a love that could embrace the caricature. A rare and challenging insight here is Kierkegaard's assertion that we must love the flesh and blood human, not the idea of the human. It is easy to love humanity or the poor in the abstract. They are noble concepts. It is much harder to love the specific, smelling, complaining individual standing in front of you. Kierkegaard warns against poetic love that loves the image but despises the reality. He demands a prosaic love that can handle the grit of existence. This connects back to section 14, Transformation of Vision. To love the unlovable requires the highest setting of the loving lens. It requires looking past the jagged edges of a person's personality to find the sacred center. It is the work of the miner who digs through tons of ugly rock to find a single diamond. The miner does not hate the rock. He respects it as the hiding place of the gem. For the listener, this section addresses the irritation we feel toward difficult people in our lives, the nagging relative, the incompetent co-worker. We often wait for them to change so we can love them. Kierkegaard says, do not wait. Love them in their ugliness. Paradoxically, this love is often the only thing that can beautify them. When an unlovable person feels loved, they often soften. The defense mechanisms of the ugly personality, the bitterness, the aggression are often scars from a lack of love. By offering love without condition, you apply a balm to those scars. Kierkegaard writes, "When we look at the sun, we must not look at the spots, but at the light. Even the sun has spots. Every human being has spots, unlovable traits. If we fixate on the spots, we go blind to the light. The work of love is to keep the eye trained on the light, however faint it may be. This is a rigorous discipline. It is the refusal to be disgusted by humanity." Actionable conclusion. Identify the most unlovable person in your current orbit. Someone who annoys you or whom you find repellent. Acknowledge your natural aversion. Then, perform the Kierkegaardian inversion instead of avoiding them. Decide to offer them a small, secret dignity tomorrow. It could be a smile, a polite greeting, or simply listening to them without interrupting. Do not do it for them to change. Do it for you to exercise the muscle of unconditional love. When you can love the unlovable, you have conquered the world, for nothing can offend you anymore. You are safe in the fortress of mercy. Section 19. God as the middle term. As we near the conclusion, Kierkegaard introduces the structural secret that holds his entire philosophy together. The middle term Mellanbestemmelsen. He argues that a direct, two-way relationship between two human beings is inherently unstable. If it is just you and me, we will eventually consume each other, or bore each other, or disappoint each other. The weight of expectation is too heavy for a human to bear. Therefore, Kierkegaard introduces a third element, the good, the eternal, or God. He visualizes true love not as a straight line between 2 points, but as a triangle. In this geometry of love, the two lovers or friends, or family members stand at the base of the triangle. They do not look only at each other. They look up toward the apex, the middle term. They are united not just by their feelings for each other, but by their shared allegiance to the good. This triangulation removes the pressure. I do not need you to be my God. I already have one. I do not need you to complete me. I am completed by the eternal. Therefore, I can love you freely, without making crushing demands on you. The historical context is Kierkegaard's devout, albeit unconventional, Christianity. He believed that worldly love was selfish because it excluded the divine. It was a form of idolatry where we worship the beloved. Christian love, or ethical love, places the good in the middle. To love your neighbor is to love God in your neighbor. To love your spouse is to help them love God. This prevents the relationship from becoming a shared egoism à deux, where two people team up to ignore the rest of the world. A rare and philosophical nuance is the idea that the middle term acts as a transformer. When my neighbor hurts me, if I look directly at him, I react with anger. But if I pass the interaction through the middle term, if I look at God, the good first, the anger is transformed into patience. I forgive him not because he deserves it, but because the middle term commands it. The middle term absorbs the shock of human imperfection. It is the buffer zone that keeps the peace. This connects back to Section 3 commandment. We obey the commandment, "Thou shalt love," because it comes from the middle term. This protects us from the fluctuations of the other person. Even if the other person walks away, the middle term remains. Therefore, the love remains. The triangle still stands even if one corner at the base wobbles. For the secular listener or the sleeper, this concept can be understood as higher purpose. If a relationship is based only on pleasure, It fails when pleasure fades. If it is based on a shared purpose, raising a family, building a life, serving a community, it endures. The third thing binds the two together. Kierkegaard writes, "Worldly wisdom thinks that love is a relationship between man and man. Christianity teaches that love is a relationship between man, God-man. This structure brings immense rest. It means you are never truly alone in your loving. You are always supported by the structure. You are not holding up the bridge of the relationship by yourself. The keystone, the middle term, is holding it up. You just have to stay in your position." Actionable conclusion. Tonight, visualize the relationships in your life not as straight lines, but as triangles. See the person you love, and then visualize a point above both of you representing peace, truth, or the divine. Imagine your love flowing up to that point and then down to them. This detour purifies the love. It removes the sticky attachment of need and replaces it with the clean air of devotion. Realize that something greater than both of you is holding you together. Let the middle term carry the weight of the connection while you sleep. Section 20. Love abides through action. We arrive at the final synthesis, the resting place of our journey. Kierkegaard closes with the resounding affirmation that love abides, drawing from the famous passage in 1 Corinthians 13, "Faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love." He constructs a final argument for the permanence of action over emotion. Everything in this world is fleeting. Our bodies age, our fortunes change, our moods flicker like candles in the wind. But Kierkegaard asserts that a loving deed, once performed, enters the realm of the eternal. It cannot be undone. It cannot be erased. It abides. In this final section, we synthesize the root and the fruit, section 1. The root was hidden. The fruit was visible. Now, we see the harvest. A life lived in the works of love is a life that has built a granary that time cannot destroy. Kierkegaard contrasts the passing nature of the world with the remaining nature of love. He asks us to consider what we will take with us when we leave this life. We cannot take our money, our reputation, or our clever arguments. We can only take the love we have given. In a strange economic twist, we only keep what we have given away. The historical resonance is powerful here. Kierkegaard died young, at 42, in the midst of a great conflict with the church. He died seemingly alone, his money spent, his health shattered. To the world, he looked like a failure, but he died with an immense peace, confident that his works, his writings, his truth-telling would abide, and they have. We are reading them tonight, nearly 2 centuries later. His love for the truth survived his death. He proved his own thesis. The action outlives the actor. A rare and beautiful detail is the concept of the echo of eternity. Kierkegaard suggests that every loving action strikes a chord that vibrates forever. When you forgave your brother, section 12. When you helped the neighbor, section 4. When you hid the sin, section 9. Those were not temporary events. They were permanent inscriptions on the conscience of the universe. The world may forget, but the eternal remembers. This offers the ultimate consolation for the sleeper. We often fear that our days are wasted, that we are slipping through time like water through fingers. Kierkegaard says no. Every moment you acted in love, you captured time and made it eternal. You saved that moment. A day filled with small acts of kindness is a day preserved forever. You can close your eyes knowing that nothing real was lost. The love you generated today is safe. It abides. Kierkegaard writes, "Love is the only thing that cannot be deceived, for it is the only thing that endures." All other strategies fail. Cleverness fails. Power fails. Only love remains standing when the smoke clears. This is the final argument for why we should choose the difficult path of works over the easy path of feelings. The easy path leads to nothingness. The difficult path leads to substance, actionable conclusion. As you prepare for the final surrender of sleep, look back at the field of your day. Do not look at the weeds, the mistakes. Look at the harvest. Identify one thing you did today that was a work of love. It might be tiny. Hold it in your mind. Realize that this action is now a permanent part of reality. It is a brick in the house that abides. You have added to the sum total of goodness in the universe. With that assurance, let the day go. The work is done. The love remains. We have walked the long path together. We have traveled from the hidden root to the visible fruit. We have moved from the deception of silence to the courage of speech. We have built bridges of reconciliation and learned to see with the eyes of the builder. The philosophy of Soren Kierkegaard is not a puzzle to be solved, but a pillow to rest upon. It reminds us that life is not about the storm of emotions, but the anchor of duty. You have learned that love is not a mystery that happens to you, but a work that is done by you. And because it is your work, it is within your control. You do not need to wait for the world to be kind. You have the power to be kind. You do not need to wait to be loved. You have the commandment to love. In this autonomy, there is peace. The anxiety of the what if dissolves into the certainty of the thou shalt. You are an architect of the Spirit. Today, you laid your bricks. You mixed your mortar. You built up the neighbor, and you built up yourself. The structure stands. Now, the tools are put away. The construction site is silent. The works of love are finished for this day. The middle term watches over the house you have built. The neighbor is at rest, and you, the faithful worker, are released from your labor. There is no more needing to figure it out. There is no more needing to judge or be judged. There is only the abiding reality of what has been done. The tree has borne its fruit. The root sleeps in the dark earth, gathering strength for tomorrow. But for now, there is only the quiet, the deep, fertile, protecting quiet. Rest in the work, rest in the love, sweet dreams. End of script.